The fear you feel in your body when you know something is wrong. An acute and unique shift from okay to panic.
And I was just starting to worry that I was about to have a heart attack because I'm just thinking like left side of my body, like something's very wrong. What is happening? I couldn't breathe.
An experience terrifying in its reality, but one that can save your life.
I would sniff my nose like that and it would send the shockwave into my lung and it hurt so bad. I remember sitting on the couch just crunched up trying to breathe normally and realizing what was happening to me was in no way a place where I could audition and dance full out in 5 days.
Every 6 minutes, somebody in America dies of a blood clot.
We're here to change that statistic. Welcome to Taking a Breath, a Stop the Clot podcast.
An award-winning podcast dedicated to bringing awareness of the dangers of blood clots from the clotting disorders community to the world.
With the help of many notable blood clot survivors, we are here to give you the knowledge and the skills you need to prevent this silent killer.
My name is Leslie Lake. I am the president of the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I am a blood clot survivor.
And my name is Todd Robertson. I'm the patient engagement liaison for the National Blood Clot Alliance, and I am a 7-time blood clot survivor.
And we're here to stop the clot. From a young age, we all develop a dream version of our lives, aspirations that keep us moving and striving and pushing forward towards the life we know we belong to. Though many of these hopes never fully come to fruition, some of us get the experience of seeing that life in all of its anticipated glory. How do you recalibrate when the moment your life is about to change for the better, it takes a seismic shift in the other direction? Our guest today is someone who knows that experience all too well. As a dancer with a creative drive only matched by a few, please join me in welcoming the star of Netflix's America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, and current Cowboys Cheerleader, the wonderfully effervescent Charly Barby.
My name is Charly Barby, and I'm originally from California. I'm a dancer and now a current Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. And I just grew up in the dance world throughout my entire life. I started when I was 2 years old, and I just did competitions growing up throughout grade school and high school. And then I graduated my high school, and then I moved to Arizona, where I was on the Arizona State dance team for 2 years. Then COVID happened, and then I went back to California, but this time in the southern part, and was a part of Mather Dance Company's Bridge into the Industry program, where I studied there for a year and also did online school at ASU. And then I went back to ASU to finish out my senior year of college, and I was on the AZ Aces World's Dance team at that time. Then after my graduation from college, I tried out for the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, and I made it through the entire process, which is a very long month-to-month process with a lot of rounds. And I was the last cut in training camp. I made it to the very end, and then sadly was cut. And then I went back home to California, took a little time to grieve, and then ended up moving back here to Dallas to fully train full time and just put all my worth into training for this season's auditions. And then I auditioned again this past season and ended up making the team. I knew something was wrong. It kind of all started back in April, and I was just really focused on training to make the team and fully committing myself to doing everything I can to be the best version of myself, both physically and mentally. And from January to April, that was like my main focus. It was the best. I had the best time. And then in April, I went to Hawaii for my birthday. And then when I came back from that, I got really sick with 101 to 103 degree fever for 15 straight days. I went back and forth to the doctor while they tested me for the flu and COVID and other illnesses, and tried treating it with Tamiflu and prednisone and other steroids, thinking that it was just some sort of sickness. I was not dancing at all during this time, which terrified me because auditions were in the beginning of May. I believe they started the 1st or 2nd of May. So in April, obviously, that is my worst nightmare. But after coming back, my fever had spiked to its all-time high. And so they gave me an antibiotic, which in 5 days, I would come to find out that I was extremely, extremely allergic to that antibiotic. One of the telling signs of that was every tendon in my body blew up like a balloon, and I was en route to tendonitis actually caused by this drug. I couldn't walk because of the size of my ankles, and I felt like every joint was just like attacking itself in my body. And at this point, my back was in so much pain that I couldn't jump or hop or go over speed bumps actually, or any activity that caused gravity to weigh me down. And my heartbeat was also at just like an all-time high. So after realizing this, I stopped taking the drug, of course, and I was able to slowly walk much easier. And I had a flight to catch to Los Angeles to get my headshots and body shots done for auditions. So I ended up getting on a flight, and my ankles were still huge and swollen. And looking back, getting on an airplane was definitely not the best idea, because when I got home, they were the most inflamed that they had ever been. A few days went by after getting home and stopping the drug. The swelling had gone down pretty much back to normal, and I immediately started dancing again, and that weekend working on my first round video for auditions that had already opened but was due that upcoming Sunday. So I had about 7 days or so. On Monday, May 6th, I woke up and had pretty much no idea that my life was about to completely change within that month. I was woken up around 5 a.m. with absolutely excruciating pain in my left side. My rib cage, my back, all the way up from my shoulder to my hip bone was just like an insane pain. And I've never felt anything like that before. I just remember being initially confused and thought I was just like sore from dancing, or that I pulled something in my rib cage. And I just grew up kind of not ever acknowledging injuries or thinking that they were serious, because as a dancer, I was always just taught to push through the pain. And on top of that, I had never had a true serious injury before, but I just chose to ignore it and get ready and go to the studio and practice like I had that past weekend. I've always been so much of like a mind over physical body, I guess. I just think my mind's stronger than my body, and especially through dance, I've always had that type of mindset. So I really was just like, I'm fine. Like, this is the most important thing of my entire life, and I am hurting right now, and that's just not gonna happen. So I'm just gonna block that out. But at the studio, I just really couldn't do a lot of things full out without a really, really, really fierce stabbing pain in my rib cage. And it took me short of breath, and it was just really starting to worry me. However, I just chose to ignore it, like I said, and work on my solo and do things semi-full out. But in the back of my mind, I was just starting to think something's wrong, but I'm just gonna block that out for a little bit. I was doing things that I thought would help it. I tried just like stretching my side. I KT taped it actually. I rolled it out with a massage gun, which is probably the worst thing that I could have possibly done. The closest that I thought it could be was a cramp. That's what I thought. So I was drinking pickle juice and then also laying on a heating pad. And then fast forward to that night, I just did not sleep at all because of the shooting pain, and it just continually got substantially worse and worse, and I barely could breathe laying down, and that wasn't something that happened to me the night before, so I knew something was getting worse, and my breath was just like so short. I had about 5 days until my audition video was due, which is huge, and I had a private with one of my close dance teachers, Jennifer, and I just told her, like, something's wrong with my back. I think I pulled my back, and she, of course, did not want to make it any worse. So we more sat and talked and like got myself mentally prepared for auditions, because at this point it was hard for me to even breathe while speaking, and the pain had just obviously become much more intense. Also through this, since the beginning of April when I got sick, my poor mom kept telling me, I will fly down there and take care of you, like, you just let me know. And every day she would remind me of this, and I would always tell her, like, no, it's okay, like, I'm fine, I can take care of myself, and I'm just a very independent person, and I don't want to ever put a burden on anybody. And so that was just, I just didn't want that to happen at all. So I was like, it's fine, like, don't worry, I'm just sick, like, nothing's, like, it's fine. However, this would change, because after that practice, I was just like, there's literally no way that something isn't seriously wrong. So I called her and I told her that I did need her here with me. And so she immediately booked a flight and was on the way to the airport. And I realized when I was driving back home and like getting into my apartment, I was just slowly becoming more immobile pretty much. And the longer the day went on, I couldn't stand up straight. I was just completely like hunched over, like holding my side. And the pain was just absolutely excruciating. Like I genuinely had never felt anything like that. And I was just starting to worry that I was about to have a heart attack, because I'm just thinking like left side of my body, like something's very wrong. What is happening? And so I couldn't breathe. I was still like kind of getting over being sick for so long, and I would sniff my nose and it would send the shockwave into my lung, and it hurt so bad. I couldn't cough. I couldn't lay down because I couldn't breathe. I was just genuinely miserable. And I remember sitting on the couch just crunched up, like trying to breathe normally, and realizing what was happening to me was in no way a place where I could audition and dance full out in 5 days. So I just like kind of sat there like numb and didn't know what to do. I knew I needed to go to the ER, but I wanted to wait for my mom, who was still on a flight. I started to worry about being alone and thinking, what if something happened to me and nobody knew and there's no one around me? And I was just in a state of shock kind of, and fight or flight. And I was also just barely feeling aware of things going on around me. However, I knew I needed to get to the ER, but I didn't want to cause a scene, and I didn't think that it was anything like super serious. So I drove myself to the ER, which was a horrible idea, obviously, and I'm just so grateful that I had a safe drive there. I remember it, but it's very blurry in the sense of I was just like, ER, like get me to the ER. When I got there, the ER was extremely busy, as a downtown Dallas ER is. And I remember trying to tell them my first and last name, and it took me 3 breaths to try to get it all out. And I was like, Charly, like I could not speak at all. And I told them I was feeling like I was having a heart attack. So they immediately took me in to do an EKG on my heart. And I just went back and forth from the waiting room. I did a chest x-ray, a back x-ray, a million blood tests, urine samples, and then finally a CT scan. And this was in the span of 12, 13, 14 hours. And then around like 12 a.m., 1 a.m., my mom got to the ER, which I was just so grateful for. When they did my blood work, they found out that my D-dimer was high, so they wanted to run a CT scan. And the doctor was kind of like, it should be fine. It's just a little high, so like we're just gonna check. And I was like, okay. But like at this point in my life, I had been going through this for a month, and I just wanted to know what was wrong so bad that I didn't care essentially what it was or how bad it was. And I just remember going through the machine, barely being able to breathe because you have to lay down. And when the results came back, I could tell the doctor was even a little shocked. And she sat my mom and I down and just said, you have a large blood clot in your left lung, and it actually killed the entire top part of your lung. So quite literally, I'm sitting here taking in this information being like, I have no lung. The top part of my lung is deceased in my body, which makes sense as to why I couldn't function literally at all. And obviously that was terrifying to hear with the timeline of auditions, because it was now Wednesday and they were due in 4 days and my lung was dead in my body. So that was terrifying to hear. Absolutely. The first thing I asked the doctor, I was like, I have an audition that I need to dance full out on Sunday. And she was like, I just like to try to rest and like just don't push it. And I'm like, okay, like I'm doing it. I don't care. I will be doing it no matter what happens. I have to do it. And she was like, oh my God, how is this lady literally going to do that? After she told that, my mom, first of all, was just like absolutely stunned by her saying that. And I remember we both had 2 very different reactions. Her reaction was, oh my God, my 23-year-old daughter has a blood clot in her lung. That's insane. I've never had any prior health issues, so I think she was just absolutely taken back by that. I, on the other hand, was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Someone give me a diagnosis, because I have been called a mystery through urgent care doctors, and I'm from California and I don't have Texas insurance. And so I haven't been able to see real doctors, and they all had been calling me a mystery. And I don't know, it's COVID, it's this. They did not know, and I just was happy to hear an ER nurse that definitely knows what she was doing tell me a diagnosis where I could get medicine to get better. And that's what was going through my mind. My poor mom was literally like, what do you mean? And come months later, really, truly learned. I did a lot of research and I did a lot of finding my own information about blood clots and how serious they are, especially pulmonary embolisms. And I didn't really realize the full picture of how life-threatening and how terrifying they can be. And my whole mindset was like, oh my gosh, well, thank God it didn't go to my brain or my heart and it went to my lung. And of course, that's definitely something to be thankful for too. But at the time, I wasn't really comprehending how scary it is for someone to have a pulmonary embolism. I was immediately put on a high dose of blood thinners and every pain medication you could possibly think of. I was actually lucky enough to be discharged on Wednesday morning, which I know is rare, but all of my oxygen levels and vitals were okay. So I got to go home. I also think that was a product of me being like, I have to practice, which is again horrible, but they felt that I was okay to do that. So I got to go home. For the next 3 days, my mom was my full-time caregiver. I still could not lay down, so I spent every single night sitting upright, sleeping on this couch, and she would essentially carry my body weight around the apartment because I was still fully immobile. But throughout the days leading up to Sunday, I was getting better each day. Little by little, I just kept thinking, like, there is no way that I'm not auditioning this year. I moved here. I worked so hard. I've put just everything into the past year into this first video, essentially. And if I can't do the first round at all, then what was any of that for? And so fast forward there, I was just getting a little bit better each and every day, but not fully able to dance. But the first 2 days, going back to that, I could not walk like at all. And my mom, you're thinking blood circulation, like let's get her walking. And like she would try to get me to walk to like the Starbucks that's by my house. And I would have to stop halfway and go back. I was trying to push my body to do. And I was just like praying that on Sunday that I would be okay for some sort of video that I could submit or anything like that. It was now Sunday morning and it was due at 8 p.m. this night. And I texted my dance teacher, the same one, Jennifer, and I asked her if she would be able to film my round one. And mind you, it was Mother's Day and she's a mother. So I'm very grateful that she was able to do that. And I had my mom with me. So I was like, I love you guys so much. But I got ready. I just remember literally praying on the way there, like, please let me just be able to do this one time full out. All I need is a video. All I need is just something to submit that gets me into this process again. And if I'm not able to do that, like I'm going to be really, really, really sad. And so I just prayed on the way there and my mom and I drove to the studio. And when I got there, I met with Jennifer and we just took a ton of tricks out of my solo and cool things, which sucks at the time, but I was able to film my solo semi-full out, pretty much full out, but semi-full out 4 full times, which was huge for me. That I literally feel like was an out-of-body experience because my mind, I felt, was so powerful during that time in my life. And I was in pain, don't get me wrong. I was definitely in pain and it's cardio, it's hard and you're breathing heavy and I have half of a lung that's not alive. And so I remember hurting, but I would have hurt so much more if I didn't turn in that video than did I physically in that moment. And I wanted a video that I was proud of and that I was confident would get me to the second round of auditions because, mind you, this is still just the first round. Like there's no promises of getting even to the second video by any means. And so I was just like, all I have is today. It's due in 4 hours and I'm just going to give it everything I have. So I did film it and that was huge for me. And I definitely pushed my body to the absolute ends to make this happen. But I would do that a million times over and over again because it truly was just so important to me. And then just a couple of days prior to that, I wasn't walking and I wasn't breathing and I was getting carried everywhere. And like, I truly could not function. So being able to do my first round full out was truly like the most rewarding thing I think I'll honestly ever feel in my entire life. And I remember I submitted it at 7:53 p.m. and I was just that like relief that I felt was just so overwhelming.
For blood clot survivors, getting the answers to how and why is an imperative effort, whether a genetic predisposition or a catalyzing injury. Clotting events tend to reshape your perspective on your relationship to your own body. Am I okay? Did I sustain a long-term injury? Did I take something that caused this? The swirling of speculation becomes a day-to-day battle. Here to discuss injuries sustained by a clotting event and the potential effects antibiotics have in contributing to blood clots, this is Dr. Carolyn Cromwell from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City.
There are a few things I think we should be aware of that can happen after you've had a blood clot. Particularly, we're talking about blood clot in the lungs. So yes, first of all, we can have some of the tissue. If the clot forms and then there's lung tissue beyond the clot, if it's severe enough, it can cause that tissue to die or infarct, as we like to say. Thankfully, we have a lot of tissue in our lungs to help us compensate, but that can happen. And even in people where that happens, they can often have a full recovery. It won't necessarily stop that in terms of how they're feeling and their activity. Also, other things that we should know about, there's something called pulmonary hypertension, which is what it sounds like, which is actually high pressure, but in the lungs. And clots that happen, if they sort of happen throughout the lungs, can narrow the vessels and then lead to this chronic thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension. Some people also continue to feel like they have symptoms of the PE even if the blood clot is gone. So that can definitely happen where you're still sort of having issues with, let's say, shortness of breath, getting back to your full exercising that you were doing before. So these are not necessarily common, but they certainly can happen after people have a pulmonary embolus, especially if it's larger. I would say in general, it's not known that antibiotics definitely can, let's say, cause or contribute to a blood clot. But things that could happen is, number one, if we have a side effect from the antibiotic that causes us, let's say, more immobility or illness. If whatever we are on the antibiotics for is actually causing us to have inflammation or illness, whatever the antibiotic is treating. And also we have to remember antibiotics can interact with other medications, so that could also possibly contribute to worsening clot.
So, Charly, I want to ask a little about that moment on the couch where you realize things are more than just a little bit wrong. Knowing that this is a threshold for you and realizing your dreams, can you walk all of us through that mindset more specifically? What was it like for you to have to confront this crossroads?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I will never forget those days leading up. It felt like the longest days of my entire life, just leading up to that Sunday and just being so upset. I tried to be so strong-minded and so confident that I was going to be able to whip this out one way or the other. And I remember the days coming back from the hospital, the amount of drugs I was on was insane. I was on huge pain medications. I was on a super high dose of blood thinners. Another thing that I feel like people don't talk about enough is how you feel about pills and medication and everything after you go through something like that. Specifically in my situation, it kind of really started from me getting sick and being put on a medication. We'll never truly know because you can't go back in time and diagnose that. But what I feel that started it was the 15 days that I was sick and being put on an antibiotic that inflamed my legs, which I will never truly know. But I do believe that a DVT was essentially formed in my leg and then traveled to my lung, which again, we won't know that for sure because we didn't catch it early enough. But that stems from an antibiotic. And now I'm on all these new drugs. Oh my gosh, what if I have an allergic reaction to this? And what if I'm allergic to this? And this just gave me the worst scenario that I've ever been through in my entire life. Is it even worth it to take these other drugs? And blood thinners are a huge, huge deal. They're a big medication. They're a hazard, honestly, if you're a dancer. They're a hazard if you play a contact sport. And luckily, a lot of the things that I do now do not require contact, which is great. But I think back to when I was in my days at the studio or on a dance team and we do these huge crazy lifts and these flips and stuff. And like, that is horrible to be taken away from you because of now a drug. You know what I mean? Like at first it's like that's being taken away from you because your body can't handle it. But if you're on those blood thinners and you have a collision with somebody or something happens that's out of your control and you're back in the ER and now it's a huge deal because your brain's bleeding or something's bleeding or like it's a scary drug to be on as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you've become after your PE and what the second act has been like experiencing life as a blood clot survivor?
Yeah, I think 2024 will forever be the craziest year of my life that has ever happened to me. It's been filled with the best things that have ever happened to me, absolutely in a year, but also this happened as well. So we got to account for that. I will say though, after I went through this entire experience, jumping ahead just like a little bit, I went to my doctor and I got a series of a million different tests to try to see like if I had any underlying condition prior. And I did a bunch of blood work and it was found that I do also have factor V Leiden. So that also was a factor in what was happening. And so my summer and my fall and really actually the whole rest of the half of 2024 was a lot focused on health-wise, was a lot focused on what are the other things that could have had this occur. I was also on birth control that had estrogen in it. And I know that's also a huge factor. So I had that. I had factor V Leiden. And I'm still currently in the process of getting tested for more things, making sure that I don't have an autoimmune disease, or if I do, what that entails. But a lot of doctor's appointments, that's for sure, just to try to figure out what happened and to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. On the positive side to that, I was able to do my second round video. I submitted it and I was lucky enough to be asked to be a finalist for the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, which was just the most rewarding day ever, knowing everything that had been brought up to that moment, which doesn't even stem at the beginning of the blood clot. That stems me graduating in 2023 and wanting to be a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader so bad. And the whole process of going through that entire process and being cut. I was the very last one and it's heartbreaking, but that also taught me so much. Then going back to living in California and living a slower lifestyle and then realizing that I do want to make this happen. I'm going to move to Dallas and I'm going to do it. And then it's a lot of this and it's a lot of getting stuck in the highs and lows. And that moment in finals, I was just so happy and so excited. And then at the end of that night, I was invited into training camp, which is the next step. And it's a very, very honorable thing to be in training camp, and to be in it twice is very honorable as well. And I did not take that lightly. And I was just, oh my gosh, I'm back where I was last year. And like, maybe I can really make this happen this year. And I just felt a lot more at peace. I felt like I knew myself a lot more. I trained so hard, like seriously so hard, that I felt that I knew the style. And I just felt like I had a lot of people cheering me on. And I felt like I was confident in myself enough. And I went through training camp all summer, again, while getting all these blood tests done and everything. And I ended up making the team in July, at the very end of July. And it was the best moment ever. I will never, ever forget that. I felt so lucky and so grateful and just had a sense of like, oh my gosh, like everything that has been in my life that has led up to this moment has been for a reason. And it's all paying off right now. And it paid off this entire season. It's been just like the best year ever. And I truly love it more than anything. And I get to live my dream and do all these crazy things and just dance and like live exactly the dream life that I've wanted to. But that would not have happened if I hadn't gone through all this stuff prior. And I feel like that's a very good example of you can't give up on something so easily, and you can't give up at all until you make it happen. And so it's been the best experience ever. And being at games and going to appearances and giving back is a huge, huge thing that I take to heart. And we actually had our My Cause, My Boot game back in December of last year. And my cause was blood clot awareness, of course. And so I was able to have a red little star on my boot and spread awareness and spread my story about what happened to me and how blood clot awareness relates to myself and my story. And prior to that, I didn't really tell anybody about it because I wanted to focus on making the team. And that was a whole nother thing. Like, that's a whole nother can of worms. So I really just wanted to focus on my first year and tell my story when it was right for me. And I felt that a great way to do that would be for that game. And so I told a couple of my teammates, a couple of the staff members knew, but not all of them. And I made this video that I posted on my Instagram. It's like a 15-minute reel explaining in detail everything that had happened to me. And I posted it, and I had no idea the amount of people that it would reach and the audience that it would reach. And I was just absolutely taken back for a week just reading these comments of all these people who have lost their husbands and their grandpas and their moms and their dads and their children to a pulmonary embolism. And that, I think, is when it truly set into me to be like, oh my gosh, I did not realize how extremely life-threatening something like this is and how it's literally a silent killer and nobody really talks about it. And I had no idea that my symptoms were exactly on paper what a pulmonary embolism is.
Charly, in all of this effort through sharing your story and really allowing people a glimpse into this incredibly scary moment in your life and choosing to speak about your experience, you're doing life-saving work, from seeing your video and knowing that they aren't alone to giving people the tools of knowledge and looking for the signs and symptoms of blood clots within themselves. How does this actually feel, knowing that your willingness to be a blood clot awareness advocate, to come forward, to speak about your experience, has helped so many people around the world?
Emotional. That's not ever something that I would see myself do, as like, I don't know, help save lives is like a crazy phrase to me. If I can help anybody figure out anything or catch something sooner than someone else has, or just, I don't know, I obviously caught it in enough time, but I always think back, like, what if I waited one more day and would I still be here? And like, I just think spreading awareness of what the symptoms are is so important, because it truly could save someone's life. And I feel so honored that that can reach someone and end up saving someone's life. Like, it's so something that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to comprehend that, but I just feel so lucky and so honored and grateful that I could be somebody that can tell someone, like, take yourself seriously. Don't do what I did and ignore it and pretend that it's not anything big. And always see a doctor when you feel like something in your gut is telling you that it's wrong. But I just feel so grateful and blessed and very honored. Honored is just the word.
Charly, we are just so appreciative of you coming in today and sharing your experience with us. We want to thank you for truly changing and saving lives through your advocacy.
Thank you. No, thank you for letting me come on here and share my story, because that means the absolute world to me.
We want to thank Charly one more time for sharing her experience with us today. A special thank you to the exquisite Dr. Carolyn Cromwell for her insight and expertise. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Taking a Breath. For more information on risks, prevention, and community, please visit stoptheclot.org.
We know the patient because we are the patient. And together with listeners like you, we can collectively stop the clot.
For more information, visit stoptheclot.org. Another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.